Ladies and gentlemen, it's Monday, and you know what that means. Live from No Sales Studios, I'm the Ace of Tavern, Ace Field Retro, and we are back with another episode of Wrestling Tonight. Just got back from touching grass. As always, joined by the one bad Chad. What's up, dude?
Nothing better, just a little peek behind the curtain. We pre-recorded this, so if you're in the comment section, we appreciate it. But yeah, it's nothing like Sunday morning, going out, running your fingers through that freshly cut lawn. That grass feels good, and we're going to get into it. The grass always feels good, guys. Go touch some.
Yeah, go walk outside, take your shoes off, maybe a little socks, get the grass between your toes, and just enjoy the warmer weather here in the Northeast. If you're around the Northeast, enjoy it. But we have a lot of stories to get into. If you guys want to support us, go to theturnbuckletavern.com where you can find all of our stuff. But let's get right into big story number one. Why waste any time? Because we got to get a lot in here.
Let's do it.
Big stories. Story one.
Well, story number one, Mr. Phil Brooks is back in there, and he takes the spot here. And apparently he's at odds again, Chad, with AEW officials, and his return for Collision is in danger. So as we've noted in the past, we had that up front last week. The Warner Brothers Discovery announcement wound up just being Collision, and we thought he'd be at the forefront of it. We thought he included all the media, and we heard that he was supposed to be, but taken off last second. There's a lot of he said, she said type of stuff going on. But it seems like what was a foregone conclusion that he'd be back in Chicago for this first debut of Collision doesn't seem as expected anymore. And we have a lot to unpack here because aside from just the confusion about the announcement, there's also the drama that's bubbling under the surface. But what else is new?
Yeah, I think last week when we did the topic of Tony's upcoming announcement, we were guessing that it's going to be, Collision announcement, Punk's return, possibly even the TV deal, maybe even a streaming announcement with Max. All we got was Collision. And if you just read the tea leaves as far as like what we knew going in and what was announced, it does seem like something happened to pull Punk because, reports that came out that he was on the kind of the template for the event and they had to scrub him out of everything at the last minute. Then Tony comes on Dynamite and makes the weird announcement of laying out the schedule for Collision in the coming weeks, except for the debut episode, which we all thought was going to be the United Center in Chicago. They had even came out and kind of penciled in that date for a House Rules event several months back before we knew about Collision, and everyone kind of started thinking a house show at the United Center, something's up here Saturday night. So we kind of knew something was coming. So for Tony to come out and say, we're going to announce that next week, it's almost like, just reading the tea leaves again, for lack of a better analogy. Like it seems like they got to take a week to try and work some shit out. That's how it feels. And from all the reports, I mean, man, it's just like, I just want to get to wrestling. This is drug on for so long. And me and Sneed were talking about, we went to an independent event on Friday night and we were talking about it, and we're kind of in a situation now as fans where we're going to be damned if we do, damned if we don't, because if he doesn't show up, it's going to be this big talking point for is he coming? Is he going? He's going to show up here. They're going to bring him back in. Are they going to cut him? We're going to get more of that for months and months and months. Or if he shows up, it's going to be, he's back. There's drama in the backstage. When's it going to blow up? When's he going to get cut again? So no matter what happens with Punk, this clickbaity stuff on all these internet websites covering pro wrestling, it's going to be the norm. I don't think any situation is going to cure this. Like whether he's there or not, this is what we're getting.
Yeah, it really resembles the political landscape starting in 2019, where this all started as like the media is driven by clickbaity stuff, and whatever's driving the news cycle, they'll continue to give you. And both sides are fueling it. Don't get me wrong. There's no faultless side. The media and also CM Punk is at fault here for giving them fuel and buying too much into it and giving them a little bit more credence than they deserve a lot of the time. But the thing that sucks about all this, and you alluded to it, was AEW was on the upswing with all this great news. The morale seemed high. We have the All In news, and it seemed like with the new debut of the Collision show, they're going to get a huge money deal with Warner Brothers Discovery, and then everything comes crashing down again. And this just sucks because aside from the Punk stuff, and you can even go back to the drama with the Miro and the Sammy Guevara stuff and Eddie Kingston, go down the line of all the stuff that has gone down in the past 13 months. It seemed like we were out of the woods because it just seemed like Punk was going to slide back into Collision. They were going to try to make things work. And then it seems like they were going to let bygones be bygones. And then now it seems like the crux of the issue, and again, we're not for teams, but we're apparently the guy that, sorry, that just cut off a little bit.
Yeah, you're good though. Just start your thought over from before. You just cut out for a second.
Yeah, so Ace Steel is apparently the guy that is at the crux of this issue. He was rehired, and apparently that was a big sticking point for CM Punk. He wanted Ace Steel in the back with him, previewing matches and helping him construct things because Ace Steel is a guy that he's close with. And when he found out he's working remotely, and again, this is all conjecture, this is the issue now where he wanted Ace Steel traveling, and there's been reports that Ace Steel was hired all along. There's been reports that Ace Steel wasn't ever going to be hired again. And there's also been reports that he was going to be hired and he's going to be traveling. So we don't know what it is, but it seems like the Ace Steel CM Punk thing is really what's the sticking point. If there is an issue again, CM Punk in the room working with Collision as a focal point.
Yeah. So it was, one of the reports was that Tony had brought back Ace Steel to work on Collision once it started, but it was going to be a remote creative endeavor for Ace. And then Punk was under the assumption he was going to be on the road with Collision week to week. When Punk found out it was a remote position, he got upset and they pulled him at the last minute. I don't know what to believe anymore, man. like, you know, I've always said, you know, the reputable dirt sheets, we defend them on here. You know, people know that we do partake in some of the dirt sheets. I think there's bottom barrel dirt sheets that I don't believe anything they say, but the guys who've been doing it for decades and credible, I do take some of their reports, you know, one of those where there's smoke, there's fire type of things. But sometimes this is kind of the blessing and the curse though with pro wrestling and the reporting of pro wrestling is there's always that out of, oh, the company's feeding them bad news. It's a work, it's a shoot. Like they can always lean on that stuff to kind of pull themselves out of bad press. But this to me it's getting so, this guy says this, another guy comes out and says that. Then you've got the talent and themselves coming out and saying, you're getting this from bad sources. There's no truth in it. So that everything's spun to kind of fix the narrative to push whoever's agenda it is. So it's always like, it's hard to grasp truth. I mean, we're in pro wrestling. It's hard to grasp what the work and what the shoot is sometimes. But I do feel like this is one of those where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something going on. We don't know how severe it is. We don't know if the Ace Steel situation is true. But talking about hearing from talent, just to kind of like give you guys a little taste of what Punk did. So all of this kind of blew up, and he was calling out Brian Alvarez from The Observer on, I mean, he was getting personal. What did he post, Ace? Like an email, right?
It's like a 14-year-old email between someone that also was talking about Punk, and Brian Alvarez was saying he doesn't have an issue with him. So I'm not sure exactly what that would prove. But going back to Alvarez for a sec before we move further from that, the Alvarez stuff is, if you listen to any Wrestling Observer Radio or Wrestling Observer Live, both Meltzer and Alvarez, they're very hesitant to talk about Punk, and they only talk in fact-driven sentences. If you listen to them, and if you want to go by what people are saying that they heard from them, or like they're interpreting things that are written, everything that he got mad about this weekend, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was mad about being Alvarez conjecturing that he was removed from the Collision promotional stuff for a reason that he may not be involved.
Right.
And I don't know how can you not make that assumption when he was supposed to be the focal point and all of a sudden he was scrubbed from all the media releases? What else can you draw a conclusion from? So what else would you want Alvarez to report? Is he not supposed to talk about that you, a huge wrestling star, were supposed to be a huge part of this show and now you're not, and he's supposed to ignore that and not connect the two things together? It just seems like, all right, so then tell us why you're not involved in Collision. Why is it going to be a surprise? I guess that could be it, but it doesn't make any sense because it's the worst kept secret. Like we said, he's something that WBD wanted to make this show something that was important.
Yeah, and I think Meltzer and those guys are. Well, Dave has openly expressed a sense of regret for the reporting of the whole Hangman, Colt Cabana, Punk situation, and how him putting out his feelings on that he felt a sense of responsibility for the brawl out happening. I remember Dave like,
yeah,
man, I feel bad now. I feel like I got to tiptoe. And I don't think any journalist should feel the need to tiptoe, but I get it. I do get the sense that I do get Dave's kind of point of view where he's like, man, there's this young company. They're getting some negative press. I don't want to be a part of the problem that hurts this company long term. Now, I don't think any of this is going to hurt them long term. I think this is just stumbling blocks on the road. But like Alvarez, I get the frustration. And you're right. When you listen to the Observer, they are definitely tiptoeing through the tulips when it comes.
Same thing with FTR. Anytime Dax comes up, they don't even explore it anymore because of everything that went down. Because now it seems like they can't talk about them.
And even Dave, I think Dave on last week, he mentioned a comment. He's like, man, I have so much other stuff I could say, but I'm not even going to touch it. He knows so much stuff that they're not even putting out. So who knows what that is? But I know we like to blame the dirt sheets. We like to blame Punk. We even like to blame the fans, the tribalism and for fans buying into this or that. But we forget, I think another person to blame in all of this, and I think it's in any big wrestling news story that gets to this degree, it's the company itself. And Dave's kind of alluded to this, and I think it's just a problem in general in pro wrestling is sometimes if these companies would just come out and give a little more information, it would stop the hearsay and all of the stuff in the press. If you would just come out and be a little more transparent in what's going on. I think the thing that has really fueled this, beyond Punk's blow up at All Out at the press conference, it's the fact that the legalities of the situation prevented every party involved from giving any take on it. And everything has been so shrouded in secrecy. You have opened the door for the dirt sheets, the reputable ones and the bottom barrel ones and the fans. You've opened the door for everyone to speculate. And when you get all of these people speculating, it becomes very muddy. And I think the situation becomes bigger than it actually is because everyone's doing these hypotheticals and they're fantasy booking, the drama. So I think a little information would have laid it out there oh, okay, here's the facts. This is what happened. We don't need to speculate about it. But once you allow dirt sheets and fans to speculate, it's going to turn into this thing, because I truly feel like if we knew the stone cold facts of the matter, it probably wouldn't be as big as what we think it is. Now, I do think there's a riff and everything, but I think at the end of the day, I don't know how you feel about it, Ace. Just to get our facts out there, of our feelings of this, it's there is a part of me that's it was a fight, man. This is pro wrestling. You're grown men in a very ego-driven, you're all about yourself. You're all about climbing that ladder. And to have a scuffle in the back. It's like, can we not just like eventually move past this? What's it been? 8 or 9 months since this happened? Like,
Right.
come on, guys. Like let's come to the and I'm not blaming the elite. I'm not blaming Punk. I'm just like, can you guys, everyone sees the potential here for what fans could have, or the money making storyline on your hands, and the fact that it's just a fight. Now, if it was some crazy thing that happened, maybe I could get behind, like, these guys aren't going to work together. But we're talking about a sport where people have been stabbed, girlfriends have been slept with, like crazy things have happened, and they've went on to do business. So I don't know. I'm just, what's your thoughts on it? What's your just initial gut feeling of this whole thing from kind of a 30,000 foot view?
My issue isn't as much as the fight as it is the stuff that led up to it, with the stuff that Punk took personally with the promo with Hangman. It was so veiled in secrecy, the workman's rights promo, that caused him to lash out on TV, because that's what really started this all.
Yep.
So whether it's Hangman that started with his promo that no one really read into, we all thought it was a weird promo, and then Punk's promo calling out Hangman, and that whole thing leading up to All Out with Moxley, all that was bizarre.
It
And it was
was.
Punk going into business for himself after he believed Hangman went into business for himself. And sometimes you have to just be the bigger person. And it seems like Punk is unable to do that. Every time there's a shot to be taken, whether it's deserved or not, he's taking the shot at Alvarez, at Meltzer, at any of the dirt sheets, at the fans, at Hangman, at the elite, and talking. And if you also go back to the scrum and how it was handled was an issue. You know, that could have been stopped. Someone could have pulled his mic out. Someone pulled him away, and we wouldn't even have this. And maybe the fight doesn't happen. So if you follow all that path, I have an issue with, yes, this could be cleared up. Yes, they can get in the room. It's a fight. Who cares? But the problem is, it's probably going to happen again, because someone's going to say something that ruffles his feathers a little bit worse. And they're not going to be able to, and especially now with the history, it's never going to be better. Because you look at all these things, he's getting riled up from rumors and innuendos and all this stuff. And then, not to mention, on the other side, there's going to be stuff that pisses you off about talent you don't want to work with. And he's coming out and talking shit about Moxley, talking shit about Jericho, guys that are stalwarts inside that locker room. If you have an issue with those guys, how could it ever get better? Of course, everyone can put their guard up and just say, we're going to work with them, no problem, make money. But what happens next? Because you put all this stock in. What I was also going to say, it's a leverage game now. At some point,
100%.
AEW had all the leverage. Now Punk has all the leverage, and he's utilizing it because he knows they need him for Collision. WBD is investing a lot. AEW is investing a lot with his star power. And now he's like, you know what? Now I have some contingencies I want. I want Ace Steel back in some capacity. And you can make the argument that he shouldn't have been fired. But yes, Ace Steel should have been fired for biting Kenny Omega. That's a fact. He should have been fired. Everybody else is inconsequential in the situation. He's inconsequential. You pull him out. You can't fire the talent because these guys are valuable. They're AEW.
Yeah.
No one knows. Yeah.
But here's the thing with Ace Steel. It's like, now I see Punk's side of it. Punk is saying, well, if the elite are coming back and the guys on the other end of that fight was me and Ace Steel, and Ace Steel's my guy, he should be here too.
True. Good point.
You know what I mean? Like that, yes. That's his way of thinking, where it's like, the only way to make this right is that all parties involved are back. They're all back. I want my guy. Biting aside, I get it. Like, I get it. That's ridiculous.
But some people, though, are a little bit more valuable in a company, and Ace Steel's not as valuable as the Bucks and Kenny Omega. And whether Punk wants to believe that or not.
But here's the thing, though. If Punk, this is an ego thing, because if Punk,
that's the issue.
if Punk allows them to not give Ace Steel his job back, Punk feels like he's lost in this situation. Like, he lost his guy, and we all know that's his guy. Do you have a problem if everything smooths out, we get United Center, Punk's back, we've got the kind of the loose, soft split, we seen all the people on the poster for Collision, and Ace Steel is a producer in the back on Collision? Do you have a problem with that?
I don't, but I don't think it should be a contingency. And I don't think Punk should have a say. If AEW officials all believe he's valuable and we don't know his value outside of just what is said on, in the dirt sheets and the things that we hear, I think if AEW officials believe he's valuable, not just to appease CM Punk for his ego or just to be his babysitter or to hold his hand in the production meetings, I think if they believe he is going to be a value for other things, not just being Punk's keeper,
yeah.
then I think he should be there. But if it's just because it's going to make Punk feel better and he won't have boo-boo face in the back, then yeah, you can't just because again, you give in on both sides. But and I understand it's an ego game. Punk doesn't want to give in, but also the elite have to feel a certain type of way where okay, we all have to work together, but Ace Steel's not making money in a program. So it's just
right.
At some point, someone has to be held responsible and lose their job. And again, if you could point out the value of Ace Steel, and there may be a lot of it, that would keep him in the loop for having a job there, but not just to be Punk's right-hand man, just to walk through the shadows with him.
I'm with you. You can't just hire him back. You can't do like a sweetheart deal where you're giving a guy who's not built for the position. But I will say, to be fair, I remember vividly prior to all of this bullshit happening last summer, Labor Day weekend, I remember hearing from multiple people in the company, talent and backstage people alike, saying how they thought Ace was great. I remember specifically Jim Ross putting him over in interviews, like Ace Steel's doing a lot in the back. Like, I remember him getting that good press. That's why when this turned, because I remember reading about the good press of Ace Steel before I knew who he was. And then when they put him in that angle where he was on TV on the flagship show, me and Sneed were like, what's going on here? Because we knew he was a booker in the back, or not a booker, but a
doing
producer.
The Rocky thing, reading the letter,
right? And we were like, "What's going on here? They're giving him more. Man, they must really be into this guy." And then when the brawl out happened, we we're like, "Wow, like what a turn for this guy!" Because he was on this trajectory. You started hearing about the positivity in the back from him, and then he's on screen, and we're like, "Shit, who is this guy?" And then boom, brawl out just takes him down. So like, I'm with you. If you're hiring him because he's great at his job, great. But if this is just a sweetheart deal to make CM Punk happy, that's where Tony Khan has to buck up and be an owner and make tough decisions. The only shitty situation is like Tony's caught between a rock and a hard place, because if he makes that hard call could come with Punk not returning, which could hurt Collision, which could hurt a relationship with Warner Brothers Discovery. Like it could have fallout. But yeah, but the elite contracts are up too. Mm-hmm. So it's like hiring him, that could cause a rift with the Bucks. You never know. I tend to think the Bucks are pretty go with the flow. I don't think they're going to. I don't know. I just don't think they're going to leverage this into a WWE run. I truly don't. Like, they are such family men. I can't see them at this stage of their career giving up all their freedom as who they are to go work for a company where they have to work way more. I don't see it.
Yeah, to me, the thing that bothers me is that he's seeing that he has leverage and he's utilizing it for the detriment of AEW. They're in a situation where there were a lot of eggs in this basket for WBD, and everyone was waiting for the upfront announcement. And we're also assuming things, which is a problem. And I understand that's what Punk has an issue with. But I can only see the facts through what is being reported. And I don't think a lot of the media sources that are talking about this Collision thing were all wrong about him being featured. And if he's just holding out because he doesn't get his way specifically, then shame on him. Because I think everybody has to make sort of amends, and they also have to get in the room together and make exceptions for each other.
Yeah, we've said that from the beginning. And just to let Punk, he's been very quiet about this. Like, as far as really talking about the situation, he's kind of posted cryptid things, and he's wrote those big novels where he buried, Moxley and Jericho and things. But he actually came out and dropped an IG live. It was about 30 seconds long or under. We have that clip. So here, all of the kind of scuttlebutt that was going on, it was interesting to see Punk come out and respond. You know, he's been posting his hockey stuff because the Stanley Cup is going on, but he had something to say about the situation.
One more before I go really quick. The parasocial relationship a lot of fringe wrestling fans have with certain people is really unhealthy. I get the tribalism, like it's fun to root for your team, but picking sides seems a little silly. You don't know me, you don't know anybody else. So, you know, just go touch grass.
I mean,
Man, so
what do you say to that?
What I say is, it's like, why even address it? You're just putting fuel to a fire that it's almost out. It could just be, you know what, stay quiet till June 19th. No one said anything crazy in the media. And if you're going through your mentions on Twitter, that's your fault. You shouldn't be reading them.
Right.
But if you look at the comments, even for Turnbuckle Tavern, people are commenting on Turnbuckle Tavern, AEW sucks, calling you guys yeehaw. We understand. If you start going through and like sub-searching your own name, you're going to see things you don't like. You have to just kind of put the blinders on and have bigger picture in mind. And it's called Collision. It's called All In. It's called making money for a company that is 5 years old. Before we move on from other topic, we have to touch on, obviously, that the backup plan allegedly is Daly's place. And it's come out that it's not true, but we're going to find out Wednesday. So we're 2 days away from that. About if they announce Chicago, we can assume that they made things work with Punk and Ace Steel's coming back and he's going to be able to have his breakfast buddy with him. Or they're going to be at Daly's place, and that will be a sign that things didn't work out and Collision's in trouble. I mean, Saturday is going to be hard anyway in the fall with college football. Saturday's a tough slot, and you're going to go against PLEs with WWE. It's a tough slot to do, even with Punk there. But they're setting themselves up for failure to be in a rampage hole, similar where everyone's going to be like, they only got 100,000 viewers on this show.
Yeah.
I hope it's not that, but I just... You can book this show as important without CM Punk and make people want to watch it. It's just a matter of, because there was a time people were watching Rampage, but you'd be off to a head start if you had Punk there, no doubt about it. Because don't get me wrong, he's their biggest star, and he's the guy who draws the biggest
legit
buzz
too.
Yeah,
like if Punk is headlining Collision and you're getting major storylines with Miro, Andrade, FTR, like that's where the meat of those stories are being told. House of Black is being like, this show could do a little better than I think people are giving it credit for. Like I think there's possibilities this could be a good show, even in a shitty spot like Saturday. Like this could become like the Sunday morning DVR with coffee show for
100%.
a lot of people. But yeah, the Daly's Place thing is troubling for me because I got to be honest. I love Daly's Place. I went to Double or Nothing there in 2021 when they did the first full capacity show after the pandemic. Great venue, but if this goes from a rumored United Center situation to 5,000 people in Daly's Place, that's a bad look.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really bad look to kick a show off. And I know they'll spin it in every way they can, where it's like, we're returning home, we're going to kick it off in the place that started it all. I get it, but the bloom will be off the rose at that point, and you're going to be starting at a deficit with a lot of fans side-eyeing you like, yeah, that's what you're saying, but we know why you're there. You know, it won't be a good look for AEW if that's what they do.
So in the newsletter, and we don't have a Dave's Rave spoiler alert here. He covered mostly Billy Graham and this stuff going on. So we don't have a performer of the week or match of the week, but Dave did write the newsletter that dropped on Monday or Friday. It dropped. I'm sorry. So he wrote, even if Punk comes back and is kept happy in all the best case for business scenarios, and it doesn't affect morale or losing talent when deals are up and the finances are positive, there are still a number of issues. He continues, over the past year, the AEW fan base has gone from the idea of consuming a lot of stuff from streaming shows to Rampage every week. More and more, you have Dynamite doing well, declining obviously from a year ago, but the decline is roughly at the same level as decline in overall cable ratings. It's not that bad, but everything but that has fallen greatly, and returns to the markets in major areas have been soft. He continues, this adds more product per week. If the rights fees are transformative, and nobody has used that term to us, then softness in other aspects like attendance is just what it is. It's not a good sign, but economically, the business isn't about live show attendance any longer, but it is still a strong barometer of how the public views the product. So bigger issue is, we were talking about, and we can also follow our way of watching the product. Dynamite's become appointment watching, and we watch it live. And obviously you guys do a reaction show, and the AW wrap-up show exists. But the problem is the AW fan base isn't sort of consuming everything on their plate anymore. They're letting things go to the side. And you can make the argument that Rampage hasn't been portrayed as important. So they just say, not watching it. But I remember 2019, 2020, 2021, people were watching Rampage, they were watching Dark Elevation, they were watching Dark. They couldn't get enough. And I guess this speaks to when you run a market too much and you give people too much, eventually they get filled up and they only want a certain amount. But we're being trained and conditioned that Dynamite has been the only thing important. So now with Collision, you're going to have to convince people that Collision is just as important and make people watch. It's not just a one-off match. It's not just going to be main event matches. It has to be transformative story that drives Dynamite. You have to tune in on Wednesday and feel like you missed out if you didn't watch on Saturday.
No, they have to make Collision feel big. I think that's why Punk has a lot of leverage right now, because he gives the appearance that is big. And I don't think he's going to be, he will be on Dynamite. Like, if he comes back to the company, I think he will be on episodes of Dynamite. Maybe not every week, but Collision will be his baby. But with what you're saying too, Ace, I think a thing that, Dave's really good on the numbers and the ratings and kind of the flow of business, the ups and downs. But one thing too, I mean, I don't think they were ever going to sustain the excitement of Dark Elevation, Rampage.
True.
That was a brand new company honeymoon phase. We all knew that would eventually die. Like any company, they were the young hot thing on the block, and once that wears off and you get a couple warts on you from just business and things going sideways, things would, I mean, look at WWE. I remember when WWE did 205 Live, when they did and it was kind of off the wings of that Cruiserweight Classic that they put on. And I was hot on the Cruiserweight Classic. And even in the beginning, I was giving 205 Live Cruiserweights. I was excited for it. And then it just becomes kind of like WWE Main Event, where no one's really watching it. Only the hardest of the hardcores. So I don't fault. There was always going to be a bottoming out. And I think we're seeing, if you look at WWE, they've had ups and downs. We're in a down. But even that, man, we talked about this in the group chat just real quick. Like, even this down, it's still good and entertaining. I think the problem with these reports with Collision, Punk, and this whole situation is and I think everyone's at fault. Journalists, wrestlers, AEW, it's painting the company in a way with fans that it's worse than it is. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's this stigma that kind of goes throughout social media and the IWC, where they're making it seem like this company is in a worse spot than it is. Because, dude, when I tune in on a Wednesday, every wrestling show has bad parts and good parts, but every Wednesday I'm entertained. I have a good time on Wednesday nights. So don't let I'm just speaking to the listener and the fans. Don't let the doom and gloom of this situation and the way it's reported paint the picture of the bell to bell stories being told, because there's still there's still a lot of entertainment there. Don't let these little offshoot things kind of paint your narrative of how the company is, because I think they've done a good job in since the fall of trying to come out of this, of trying to give us compelling stuff. And I think they're righting a lot of wrong. So it's unfortunate that something like this can change the way the fans perceive a company, because I think it's unfair.
Yeah, and to kind of lead us out here, Meltzer does end his segment on the Punk section. Says, last week, everything looked good. This week, everything looks like a series of challenges with Punk, including the fear, if things work out, of constant challenges to keep these blowups from continuing to happen. Without Punk, some of the legal issues and harmony issues may be better, but at least on paper, it brings on bigger challenges as far as drawing goes. I feel like that's fair. Those are two sides. You got to look at both sides, and I know Tony Khan has a tough decision to make, and he's the guy ultimately that can make the decision about what should happen here. And is he going to acquiesce and give Punk what he wants? He's going to read the hostage letter and say, I want this, this, and this, and this to make it right. But what happens on the other side when you give too much? Like we talked about this in the beginning. Like if you start to side with one, and like, again, he has to be impartial. He is the boss. But this goes back to the original brawl out during the press conference. Someone should have pulled that mic, man. Like that is sort of the powder keg that started all of this.
Yeah.
How was he allowed to go on? And just optically, with Tony Khan sitting next to him, we're still overcoming that. And I'm sure a lot of the talent felt a very similar way. But unfortunately, this is what we're talking about instead of $60K at Wembley Stadium. This is what we're talking about instead of Double or Nothing, which we will talk about, one of our big stories, with the 4 young talent main eventing a goddamn pay-per-view in Vegas. That should be the big story for AEW, because that makes me feel good as a fan. This to me is just toxicity that doesn't have to exist.
100%. I hope Punk has this kind of aha moment of introspection and self-awareness. And he did post something, just this could be nothing, but I got to leave you with a little bit of hope. He did post a little meme yesterday that it was one of those cross pattern pie charts. I forget what they're called. And in the middle, it said what I can control. And it had all of these things listed, happiness, all of friends and family, relationships, and then on the outside of the bubble, it had what I can't control. And it was listing a lot of things that has happened with AEW, not specifically, but in a broader sense.
Mm-hmm.
And below it, Punk captioned, I'm something like, I'm trying to do better. And to me, that sounded like, in his own way, in his own cryptic way, he was taking a little bit of the onus, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be looking at every report and taking it so personal with dirt sheet writers. So hopefully all of this works out and we get Punk on Collision and it's harmonious and we have 2 great wrestling shows. That's what I'm hoping for, because that's all I want.
Absolutely agree. Let's get to big story number 2 with the saddening passing of Billy
Big
Graham.
story 2.
So big story number 2, pro wrestling legend and industry influencer superstar Billy Graham has unfortunately passed away just days shy of his 80th birthday. We know he's been in failing health, Chad, for decades. He's placed on life support in recent days. He's been in the hospital for several months dealing with an infection. He had organ failure going on. He had emergency surgery. His wife, Valerie, was posting updates on the social media on his behalf. But I mean, aside from talking about the tail end of his life and how sick he got, I think the main focus for a lot of the wrestling podcasts and a lot of the wrestling media should be the influence that this man had on the current product we see today. Bar none, one of the most charismatic wrestlers we could have ever seen. He's been and we've guys coming out and saying they've just flat out ripped off of things that he did. I mean, he's so influential with the promos, the look, the bleach blonde hair. He was the guy. You can go through his credentials and what he accomplished in the ring, but as far as his influence goes, that tree of things that happened with guys like Hulk Hogan, Jesse Ventura, even a guy like Scott Steiner, Steve Austin, Dusty Rhodes, Vince McMahon, Triple H, that what he was doing was the first of its kind, and he was a trailblazer.
Yeah, granted, he was before our time. I've went back and watched. I'm a fan of classic wrestling, so I have seen some of his stuff, but there's a difference in growing up with it and seeing it happening live. But this guy, as a fan looking back on it, he's almost like, you could almost say he's one of the biggest figures responsible for the modern day WWE wrestler, as far as that bigger, larger than life character, over the top promo. I mean, you rattled off those names, and if you know superstar Billy Graham, as soon as you hear the name Hogan, as soon as you hear the name Jesse Ventura, you're like, yep, I know what they took. Like, he was so influential, man. Like, and I heard a really cool story from superstar Billy Graham, kind of going down a rabbit hole and watching some of his stuff. And he told a story, it may be on his documentary that's on the network, where there was a young wrestler from Minneapolis that was going to be traveling to Charlotte to do work with, Mid-Atlantic and Jim Crockett. And he was friends with this guy. And this young wrestler came to him kind of the day or two before he was set to leave for the South, say wanting to change his look up, do something different. And the guy came to Superstar and had him dye his hair. His first dye job. And we're talking about the Nature Boy Ric Flair. The first time he bleach blonded his hair, Superstar Billy Graham was the guy to do that. That's such a iconic moment in wrestling, like lore and character development. Like the moment Flair decided to take that hair, it was Superstar that kind of inspired him to get that look. He's leaving the territory. He's going into a new one. Superstar, will you do this for me? That's such a cool, and we're talking about legends. Like that's a Ric Flair. That's the birth of a Ric Flair there that came out of Superstar. And then you hear, I have a tiny little clip talking about Hogan. I mean, the Hogan influence from Superstar is so prevalent, but just to hear it from the Hulkster himself at Hogan's Hall of Fame induction, he even gave a shout out to Superstar Billy Graham.
Wrestling used to be very small and very territorial. And one day I went to Fort Homer Hesterly Armory and this guy named Superstar Billy Graham. I'm telling you, this guy climbed the second ropes. He hit a double bicep. And I looked at my father and said, Dad, I want to be just like that guy right there.
Wow.
So, I mean, you've got two of the biggest stars. How many arguments have we heard fans get into? I'm a Ric Flair guy. No, Hogan's the better. Both of those guys can at least stake a little bit of, they can give a little bit of credit to Superstar Billy Graham for helping them find themselves. That is, I think fans need to realize, see how influential that is. Two of the biggest stars that we have seen as 30-plus-year-old wrestling fans, two of the biggest legends came from Superstar Billy Graham. So if he's before your time, that's the weight this guy is carrying. It's crazy.
Yeah, and people most remember him from debuting in WWF 1975. Yep. He was the guy who ended the decade-long run for Bruno Sammartino. Only held the title for a little less than a year. There's been some regret as far as talking about he should have held the title longer. And I think even Billy Graham said that it really upset him losing the title in February of 1978 after winning in April 1977. He didn't agree with it. He was all over the place, and he had his issues with Vince McMahon, which is why he kind of got a little bit washed away from history. We got the documentary, but as far as being included in the history, and we know WWE, they're writing from the side of the victor. So if they don't want you included, we see them just completely wash you away. And there were times where Billy Graham was washed away, and he was vocal about, Vince McMahon during the steroid trial. So that kind of burned that bridge, but he eventually was named in the Hall of Fame. So he was definitely, that was where it was from, right there with Hulk Hogan talking about Billy Graham and his influence. He was inducted by Triple H. And we also just talk about his influence. We have guys coming out here and talking, and we clipped a few of them. We talked about Hogan, but you got guys like Paul Heyman coming out. And Paul Heyman said, before Billy Graham, performers in WWF were known as professional wrestlers. After Billy Graham left his mark, VKM decided everyone would be a WWE superstar, a most heartfelt RIP to the man of the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour. So Paul Heyman coming out there and his influence. We know Paul Heyman's lineage through wrestling. He's been all over the place, seeing everything. He understands, like you said, the weight that Billy Graham holds. And you even have a guy like Nick Aldis coming out, quite possibly the biggest game changer of all time. Because of Billy Graham, we got Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, not to mention countless others who made fortunes borrowing from this man. Say his name and remember him.
Yeah.
So a lot of good stuff out here. RIP to Superstar Billy Graham. Go and watch one of his old matches and, just appreciate him. There's some good shoot interviews out there with him talking wrestling and talking shop. Meltzer talked a little bit about him as well, eulogizing him. And it was like 3-4 pages long, like I said in the newsletter this week. So, and I think
even on the radio show, dude, they went 35 minutes on Billy Graham. It was great.
And the thing is with Meltzer, and I know people they have their issues with his reporting and how he sits on the fence sometimes. you can't knock the eulogization he does for all these guys that pass away. It's the best. I mean, they should make a book of these eulogies because it is a career history that tells you all you need to know. And Meltzer did have this small thing to say that I pulled. He said, here are facts. With no Billy Graham, there was no Hulk Hogan, and Hogan may be the most important character of this generation. There may have been a Ric Flair, but he'd be a very different outside the ring than this Ric Flair. There may have been a Dusty Rhodes, but not what Dusty Rhodes ended up being. Vince McMahon would probably have been the owner of WWF, but not without the prototype of what a sports entertainer should be created. The Graham that became his vision. His vision would have been very different. Plus, there would be no Hulk Hogan to execute it. So Meltzer, in his own way, kind of going through it, and he talks about the history, like working in San Francisco on the West Coast and honing his craft with that bleached blonde hair and coming up with the image and bringing it over here. Yeah. And the rest is history. Trailblazing, showmanship, and trailblazing in all these ways with charisma, changing what pro wrestling would be perceived as. It's no longer competition. It's a show with larger than life characters. And he was the first.
Yeah. Just an absolute trailblazer for sports fans. You know, I grew up with the fortunate situation of being able to watch Michael Jordan play. You know, the Dream Team, all of those guys, Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, Clyde Drexler, all of the legends of those early 90s, late 80s, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. That's what a superstar Billy Graham is for the modern fan. When you hear those big iconic names in basketball or football, the Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, you know, those larger than life names that kind of their shadows loom over the modern sport. You know, even in baseball, you know, you get those big larger than life names that just their names never go away. You know, the Babe Ruths, the Ted, all of those guys. Billy Graham is one of those guys. If you are a fan of wrestling and you appreciate the history of where it all came from, go check out Superstar Billy Graham. Go check out his matches, go check out his feuds, go check out his promos. And before we get into Big Story 3, just give you a little taste of one of Billy Graham's famous promos, and then we'll get into Big 3. Rest in peace, Superstar Billy Graham.
Some are booing, some are cheering, but nevertheless, there's pandemonium tonight. There's excitement. Look at the people's faces. Look at the people's expressions. Can you feel it? Look at you. You're excited because I am the champion, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation champion. How can I retain this belt? Why am I still the champion after months and months and months? Because I'm in shape. I'm powerful. I'm strong. I wake up every morning, work out for 5 hours, run 19 miles a day, swim across the Atlantic Ocean. Unbelievable condition. I am the man of the hour, the man with the power. Too sweet to be sour. Mystery excitement. Look at the pandemonium. Look at the thousands of people.
Big Story 3.
Big story number 3. We have the weekend preview of 3 events that are going to steal the show. If you have a significant other that, you know, they want you to do stuff, so sorry to them. We have 3 shows of wrestling to watch here. And we're going to start with AEW Double or Nothing. And this is in Vegas, 5/28. This, you can make the argument about what their biggest show of the year is. Maybe it's going to be All In going forward, but Double or Nothing, to me, it was the first ever pay-per-view, the launch of AEW all those years back. And now we have it here in 2023, headlined, as I mentioned before, by the 4 Pillars main event. And this should be sort of the main story you take away from AEW. The confidence in the star power of MJF, not to mention having Sammy Guevara, Jungle Boy, and Darby Allin there with him. And I know there's been some arguments about, well, it seems so obvious MJF's going to win. If you look at the betting odds, I think it's like 5,000 to 1 that MJF's retaining, even setting to the point where they were supposed to set the next opponent up on TV with Adam Cole. I don't know if you saw that report. They pulled it because they didn't want it so obvious that MJF's winning. To me, the predictability doesn't ruin this match for me because this is a showcase for 4 guys that really deserve to be there. And these are guys that have been there since the beginning. And this is all we ask for from AEW, not to bringing, and this is the mindset shift of a company like Impact back in the day, even WCW, taking these self-fulfilled characters that are elsewhere, you know, former WWE guys. These are all AEW originals main eventing a pay-per-view on a big stage. Awesome shit.
100%. We always say, you know, sometimes predictability in wrestling is a good thing. I think this is one of those situations. I don't want those other 3 guys to win. I think it would be a kind of ending MJF's run on a kind of a whisper more than a scream. And I think MJF deserves to get a big loss and put over someone. I think this story is really the thing I've really enjoyed about this build. And I think some people have maybe criticized it, but I think it's been quietly the strength of this angle is the fact that MJF really has kind of taken a back seat in the promotion of this match. And every week they're really allowing the other three guys to drive this story, giving them mic time, giving them vignettes, this whole angle for the last 2 or 3 months that they've slowly unfolded it has really been about getting these three guys up another level. And I know some people say, "Oh, Darby's there; he's ready to be a champion." I don't think they're quite yet there, but these little stories do elevate them in the eyes of fans, and I think it's been beautiful because MJF kind of fell into that pattern of when he had a championship match coming up, or just a match on a pay-per-view in a feud. We kind of came to know the layout of it. He would come out, he would drop these 5-6 minute heater promos, going after the fan, tearing down his opponent. But with this, we haven't seen a lot of that. There's been he's played the manipulator. He's let those guys get on the mic, and those guys try their hand at it. And they've really, I think, they've beautifully done it, because if they were to go mano a mano on the mic week after week, I think MJF could expose these guys. All three of them. All three of them are kind of weak on the mic. I mean, Darby's probably about the best one because it fits his dynamic, but I really feel like this was a calculated move to let the other guys speak without MJF standing across the ring, assassinating them with the microphone, because he could have tore them down and hurt this angle. And for him to take a back seat, I think it's genius booking. But this is the tell of not just this match. I feel like if you run down this card, for all the people out there that say this is WWE light or whatever, I mean, you've got the Four Pillars match, all four originals. You've got Orange Cassidy, an original, defending his title in that Battle Royal. You've got Wardlow, an AEW original, defending his title against Christian Cage. You've got Jamie Hayter, an AEW original, as champion, going against Toni Storm. Jade Cargill, AEW original, defending her tag title. So there's a lot of fresh young talent on this pay-per-view, and I think that's what makes this pay-per-view exciting. Is we're finally to the moment where I feel like the roster is just integrated. You've got your originals, you've got your guys who've jumped ship and came to AEW, but by putting guys like Orange and Wardlow and Jade and all these in top title matches, and they're the champions, that's a good sign for the future of this company.
Yeah, and the confidence that Tony has in all those guys to continue to build around them. And I think this main event is going to be awesome. We don't have a lot of multi-man championship matches in the main event. I can think back on obviously the triple threat with Orange and Kenny, and
that's it.
Yeah, that was the only other match that happened, and that was awesome. I love the way they do multi-man matches. I think MJF is going to do his best to put the rest of these guys over and come out smelling like roses. Unsure who's going to take the pin here. My guess would be Sammy, to build some more, I guess, sympathy with the fans as they continue to try to turn him face, which I think will be a fruitless effort, but we'll see what they can do with it.
Yeah.
But I think as far as match quality goes, this is like, you can put this against any other main event they've put out there. I think it's going to be awesome, and I think it's going to be a great showing for everyone involved. The one issue I have with the card, I actually like the rest of the card. I like the ladder match with Wardlow and Christian. I don't know what Christian's doing in the ladder match doing this. I mean, I give him credit for bumping around on a ladder, because we know Wardlow's not bumping on ladders and doing that stuff. So there's two roles in a ladder match, and then Christian's going to take on the one with a lot of damage on his body. But
yeah,
he is Orange Cassidy in the Battle Royal. And if he wins the title, it's one thing, getting guys on the card. But if he loses this international title, and I heard you guys on the flagship talking about it, that's going to sour me a little bit on what they've been building. And I'm hoping that this build up here, I almost rather the Kyle Fletcher match. And I know that's probably a hot take for people, and I know they're going to do it on Dynamite next week, or this week, I should say. I would rather have Orange Cassidy defending against Kyle Fletcher in an awesome match than a Battle Royal, because a championship, especially on that level, it's a workman's championship being defended in a battle royal. I don't know. It doesn't fit what they've been building with Orange. And I understand he's overcoming the odds and he's been beat up, and him overcoming 20 other guys would be a huge feather in his cap. But I would like to see Orange have a showcase on a pay-per-view after having how many defenses? 22 defenses of this title. I would rather him have a banger match with somebody deserving. And I'm sure we could have found somebody else. If it's not Kyle Fletcher, somebody else that could have had a great match, and Orange retains and everybody's okay.
Yeah, I would have. I'm always more of a one-on-one title match guy. I'm not big on 3-ways and 4-way, fatal 4-ways and all of that, but especially don't want to see a title on the line in a battle royal. Do I think Orange will be entertaining in it? Yeah, it'll be, Ric Flair 1992,
right?
Getting through 20 guys by the skin of his teeth. If he loses the title in that match, like you said, that is a bad look for the way his title reign ends. I guess they could look at it like they're keeping him, like he didn't really lose it,
right?
But I don't want to see that. I would rather a mystery opponent or something, a mystery entrant into the battle royal, come in, take him to the limit, Orange come out on top, and it's set up maybe a big AEW international title match for the debut kickoff of Collision, like a Miro or an Andrade. I would love to see Andrade get that title, like eventually.
Absolutely.
So maybe something like that. But I'm with you, man. If they botch this and have him just straight up lose in a battle royal, what a weak ending to this incredible title run.
And the two other matches that I want to touch on here, I think Chris Jericho and Adam Cole is the perfect appetizer to get Adam Cole ready for a title match with MJF. And I think that's where they're going to be going, potentially for All Out or All In. And I think Adam Cole, they've been having him there. And if they can, I know people have been a little bit sour on how Adam Cole's been perceived here in AEW, and I can agree with that. But since they've kind of got him away from the Undisputed Elite, obviously they have Roderick Strong, but he wasn't a part of that originally. They've kept him away, and I think this Jericho feud's been the perfect blood feud. Reminds me of the Attitude Era, where you put two guys together and they're going to come out, and the winner, even though it's not a number one contendership match, they're going to come out really not the top of the rankings. You beat Jericho, it's the perfect segue into getting into a program at MJF. So I love what they're doing there. And of course, Anarchy in the Arena is going to be amazing. I don't know how they're going to top last year with Eddie Kingston walking out with the fire can all bloodied up.
Yeah.
But they will. Think about this match, the talent in this match between
incredible
Omega, the Bucks, and Hangman. And on the other side, Danielson, Moxley, Claudio, and Wheeler. Have we ever had an 8-man tag match with that much talent in it?
Crazy.
Stipulation aside, it's insane.
Yeah, and just the spots that my imagination goes to that are going to be in this match. Like, it's going to be a blast. That match arguably could steal the night. It's set up to do that with the talent and the stipulation. But just back to Chris Jericho, Adam Cole, we were highly critical of Cole on his heel run with the Elite. Like, I love the way he came into the company. I was there at All Out the night he debuted. It was fire. What a reaction. But then I go to that lights out match with Orange Cassidy, and it just started souring. But I have honestly really enjoyed this Jericho Adam Cole feud.
Same.
I think they've done a great job of rehabbing Adam Cole, not in the health sense with his head, with his concussion scares, but more of just rehabbing his character. And that last match, that Falls Count Anywhere match with Roddy, I'm not a big Roddy Strong fan, but that match was highly entertaining. And just, they've really done a lot with a little, because this all started with just two little over the shoulder looks at each other from Jericho and Adam Cole. And it spun into that great segment that we got where the Outcasts joined in and they beat up Britt. And it was just, this has good heat behind it. It's a good blood feud. And I think it does set Adam Cole up nicely for a world title run.
Yeah, I think matches like this anchor cards. I even go back to like WrestleMania 17. Everyone remembers Rock and Austin, and they also talk about Vince and Shane. But also go Taker Triple H in a match that went all over the arena. I can see that being something what they do with Jericho and Cole. And it doesn't always have to be for a title. And I think that speaks volumes about the creativity and the flexibility of their booking strategies. They're not so much relying on stipulations and championships to tell stories. We're getting and there's been a few, of course, but this is the rare case where it's just two guys that don't like each other. Like you said, two looks at each other. They used to have respect. Now they don't. And the story's been told on screen. I think it has meaning and it feels important, which is the main thing that I'm pulling away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm jacked up for Double or Nothing. I think it's going to deliver. When has an AEW pay-per-view not delivered?
I always enjoy the AEW pay-per-views, and it's going to be a great weekend of wrestling with I have my own wrestling show on the day of 27th for Remarkable Wrestling. So it's going to be wrestling for everywhere. And
Yeah.
I'm going to be happy to put my feet up with some snacks and some drinks and enjoying
yeah.
what is AEW always puts pound for pound, dollar for dollar, the best product for me. As my wrestling fandom goes, I am highly entertained by everything they put out there. 4 hours, 5 hours.
I have no problem dropping $50. I'd never have buyer's remorse ever.
Yeah, always take my money. I love giving my money to the product that wants to give us quality cards. And I think it's going to be the same here. But let's move into Impact here and to start the weekend. And Double or Nothing, as I was putting this together, it's starting to remind me of what WrestleMania weekend has become. It's filled with, we got WWE shows, Impact, everyone's piggybacking on the side. The only company that's not there, obviously they're AEW underneath them, but ROH usually would have a show around this time as well. But Impact Under Siege, this is going to be from London, Ontario, Canada, and Impact's quietly been on a roll here, and not so quietly on our end. We've been paying very close attention to what they're doing, and we're going to get the defense of the Impact Championship from Steve Maclin and PCO in a no DQ match, similar to other matches that's setting up. And I think we talked about the predictability on the other end in the main event of Double or Nothing. It's quite clear Steve Maclin's not losing the championship to PCO, but it is the perfect first defense for him as they build something bigger for him down the line. They put a lot of stock in him. They rehabbed him and made him into a huge star. Feels like he's a big star. And they took what was a bad situation with Josh Alexander getting hurt into a blessing in disguise and elevating Steve Maclin. And I think this match is going to be awesome. I love PCO. I love what his character's become at his older age and what he did in ROH. And yeah, so if you go down, and I mean, this is a dude that's been in wrestling in the WWF 1993. So PCO has been giving his body to the business. And I think it's going to be more of the same. That no DQ match is going to be carrying this card. But there's a lot of other good stuff to pull from Impact.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is a car crash at the top of the card, but man, I'm really enjoying Steve Maclin. I think he is completely rejuvenated himself, from a nobody kind of low card guy with WWE coming in, and he's believable.
I agree.
Like his believability and some of these angles he's shooting, like I'm bought in. It does not feel like a put on. This guy feels like a legit badass, and you put him against, the French Canadian Frankenstein PCO in a match like this, it's going to be, like you said, a great notch on his belt in this title run. And I think all roads lead to Nick Aldis. I think we're going to get Steve Maclin, Nick Aldis at Slammiversary. And like you said, great matches. We got that X Division Trey Miguel, Chris Sabin match. That's going to be fire. Trey Miguel, young gun against the old guard of Chris Sabin. Guy's been there before. He's held that title before. I'm a big fan of Chris Bay and Ace Austin as a tag team. There's a lot of good stuff, man. Even that number one contendership match with Eddie Edwards and Moose and Gresham and Uemara and Kazarian and Shelley, like so many good people. And then we do get Nick Aldis, Kenny King on this card. So it's a loaded card top to bottom. And even Trinity's making a big Giselle Shaw. A lot of good stuff.
Yeah, and what they've been doing well is they've been doing shows in front of fans that are energetic and they're smaller. They're not trying to outshoot what is going to be a draw for them. And this London, Ontario crowd is going to be very, very excited to see them. And they've been really comfortable working that market. And we're going to see them go to Australia in a little bit down the line. And they're going to be replacing, I think, New Japan Pro Wrestling in that spot. But they're going to take advantage of these international crowds. And they found a sweet spot here. We saw their last pay-per-view in Canada as well. And they're drawing well there. And you mentioned Nick Aldis versus Kenny King. I think this is the perfect precursor to get Nick Aldis. We talked about Adam Cole and Jericho getting Adam Cole ready for MJF, but I think this is the perfect way to get Nick Aldis ready for Steve Maclin. Not that he needs it, but you want to have a buffer between just letting a guy come into the company and challenge for your world title. And I see eventually Nick Aldis is probably going to hold that championship.
He should
once again. And
He should.
maybe it's sooner than later. And it's just kind of a shame that Josh Alexander's not here to be in the fold because of everything he was achieving. And I loved what they did with the title and with Josh Alexander because he is lost in all this. I can't wait for him to return from his injury because he was a highlight on the show every week. And I didn't want his title reign to end. It was one of the best reigns that has been going on in all of wrestling.
Who knows what they have up, in mind and in store for us as fans. But if I'm putting my fantasy booking hat on, I have Aldis win this at Slammiversary. I have him hold it, put on some good feuds with the Mooses of the world, maybe even the Sammy Callahans of the world. Get some of those guys, build up some young guys, maybe even throw Joe Hendry in a little feud with him. But I think all roads lead to Aldis retaining that title until Josh Alexander comes back. If you can have him hold that belt until a returning Alexander goes face to face with the national treasure, I mean, that's a moment, man. A former world champion reclaiming it. You kind of play up that suit and tie heel gimmick as Aldis gains power as champion, and then the returning hero comes to take him down. There's a lot of good story there to be told.
Yeah, and I think there'll be time in between too, as you mentioned before, the world title number one contenders match with, I think it's a 6-way, Edwards, Moose, Gresham, Uemura, Kazarian, and Shelley. Not sure who comes out, but I think that person's going to be more fodder for Macklin to kind of build his prestige prior to potentially losing at Slammiversary, like you said,
Right.
to Nick Aldis and make his reign feel a little bit important. And I think Macklin would have held the title eventually. I'm unsure if that would have been the case if it was winding up being if Josh Alexander didn't get hurt.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to plug my charger in real quick, Ace.
Go for it. I'll start with the Night of Champions stuff over here.
Cool.
So
Let's
we have
do it.
Night of Champions from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, 527. This is happening. And it's a midday show. So some people will be able to hang out during the day. And Night of Champions is the Day of Champions for those on the Northeast. And we have some interesting stuff. We saw SmackDown give us some clues about what's happening with the Bloodline. The Usos are definitely on the bad side of Roman Reigns. And we have this tag title match that leaves a lot of curiosity in my end over here. The undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn defending against Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. While it seems like Owens and Zayn are not going to be losing the titles, I think the more interesting dynamic is if Reigns and Solo Sikoa win, and they're the ones holding the tag titles in front of the Usos, and maybe making the Usos hold the titles for them while they're cutting promos as lapdogs. I think that could be just a great optic and take that storyline to the next level. And where they're going to be going with the Bloodline, who knows? It seems like they've teased the breakup so often. The Usos are on a really bad slide with Roman right now. They can't do anything right. They just lost on SmackDown again. But I think Roman and Sikoa, and this will be Sikoa's first taste of WWE gold, to see Roman with all the gold. And this is a perfect opportunity to advance a story that has kind of hit the mud a little bit. I think it needs to get out of this and find a different gear because they were flying on all cylinders for a bit. And I think this could be a whole different dynamic as you continue to get Roman ready for WrestleMania 40. You got to do other interesting things, and not defending the world title, Night of Champions is interesting, but I think it'd be worth it if you put the titles on Roman and Sikoa.
Oh, really man. Do. That thought never entered my mind. I was just like, I thought, I went the way of, Usos interfering, costing them the match or something, and then there's the beef. But what you just said is so much better. If they win and they make the Usos hold their titles during promos, man, the heat that could draw. And I just want to hear fans really bitch and complain when Roman holds all of these belts. Like, there's something fun about that to me. But yeah, that like you said, WrestleMania 40, we got a ways to go before that. I think everybody kind of expects it's going to be Roman and Cody again. There's a lot of space here to tell some interesting stories. And like you said, I think it's kind of cooled off with the Bloodline a little bit. We need some more heat here. And if you put those tag titles and kind of use them as a wedge in the Bloodline between the Usos and Solo and Roman, that could be a lot of fun.
Other matches we have: Bianca Belair defending her title against Asuka, Lesnar, and Cody Rhodes in their grudge match. the World Heavyweight Championship Tournament final, Seth Rollins and AJ Styles, which we covered extensively last week. Trish Stratus versus Becky Lynch, and the Intercontinental Championship, Gunther versus Mustafa Ali. Decent card here, and Jeddah's going to be fired up for a crowd, and I'm not huge on the Saudi Arabia shows, but I think it's going to be memorable. They have some stakes here, and I think Seth and AJ are going to take that title and do their best with it to put some prestige behind it. I still believe it's going to take a lot for me to see it as a world championship, especially with Roman being top dog, but I'm interested in seeing Seth and AJ go at it for, 15 to 20 minutes. That'd be great.
Dude, I think as far as just star power, looking down the card, this card is awesome. If you're looking at just who's on this card, Gunther Mustafa, and then you got Trish, a legend, against Becky. I'm pretty critical of the way they've been booking Bianca Belair. I think this girl needs a dance partner, like a big storyline. I love Asuka. I hate what they've done to her.
Yeah, the heel clown thing is not really working for me either. No,
it's silly horse shit to me. Like, she's a killer, man. Book her like a killer. She was booked great in NXT, but that Seth Rollins AJ Styles match, I mean, it's a dream match. Let's be honest. Like that could probably steal the night. And then you put the grudge match with Lesnar and Rhodes. So Saudi Arabia is getting a hell of a card here. A lot of blood money on the table, obviously, but this is a hell of a card. I think it's going to be a good show too.
I see Seth winning the title. I think that's the obvious choice, but they've at least put some doubt in our minds, and that's all you can ask for in some matches that feel like they're predictable, that AJ Styles could win. I still think the title was created for Seth, and I don't think you move it another direction. Seth is the guy who really should have been champion a long time ago, and they're going to put the title back on him, in my opinion. But
yeah, I think you're right. I think Rollins walks away with it, and there's been rumblings. Who knows if it's true, but rumor is that AJ Styles is kind of lining up for a Killer Cross feud, carrying Cross for the Fed brains out there. But yeah, I think AJ, I think that's a good move if they do go that direction, because Karrion needs someone to elevate him with the fans, and a feud with AJ could really make that guy look good, because we all know AJ Styles, he can bump for you and he can make you look like $1 million. So I think Seth takes it. I think Cody takes it over. Lesnar could beat Cody here. We could get a trilogy.
Yep.
So
the other thing we have too for the WWE side, NXT Battleground happening on 5/28. We have Carmelo Hayes versus Braun Breaker for the NXT Championship, the Women's Championship Finals, Trish Stratton or Roxanne Perez, depending on what happens this week on Tuesday, versus Leah Valkyrie or Cora Jade. The NXT Heritage Cup, Noam Dar against Dragon Lee, the North American Championship, Wes Lee versus Tyler Bate versus Joe Gacy, and a last man standing match, Dragunov versus Dijak. Highlight for me has to be the North American Championship. Wesley's had a quietly good reign, and Tyler Bate seeing him back into the fold, really enjoy that. And if you're looking for more wrestling to watch, why not check out Battleground? NXT's been kind of reestablishing their ground here as being not as goofy as they were. It hasn't been must see, I won't say that, but I do like what they're doing, building future stars, and I like Carmelo Hayes as the NXT champion.
Yeah, I'm with you. The North American Championship is going. Anytime you put Tyler Bate in there, and I'm actually a fan of Joe Gacy. I think Joe Gacy's fun.
Yeah,
and I'm a big fan of Dragunov. So that last man standing, I think Dragunov is a psychopath, like in the best way. Like his match with Walter just lives in the back of my mind at all times. Yeah. NXT. They're finding themselves a little bit, but man, just the aesthetic, the aesthetic, that change. I'm not saying go back to black and gold, but there's something missing with just the aesthetic of the show. But hell of a card. I mean, Braun Breaker Carmelo is going to be fun. I think Breaker's kind of finding himself as a heel, so should be a fun night.
Yeah, and we're seeing kind of the fruits of their labor with the new NXT, with some of the guys coming up and girls on the WWE and roster, the main roster. Grayson Waller, most specifically, kind of taking the shine, but even pretty deadly on SmackDown, which, they were awesome too, getting the win over the Brawling Brutes. So it's nice to see NXT having some. They're bearing some fruit for the main roster, which is the first time in a while we've seen that. There's some trust on both sides that this is now the farm system to get new stars and invigorate what is. Sometimes becomes stale at the undercard. So it's nice to see these guys in there. So with that being said, let's get to quick hitters and talk about more of the stuff going on in the world of wrestling.
Quick hitters.
All right. First story in quick hitters. We saw the AEW Collision logo, and people are saying that it's paying tribute to WCW Nitro, and it is. I mean, reports and
Yes.
speculation surrounding the show are already well underway. We know what it's going to look like. Has me thinking a little bit about what the stage could look like. Of course, you don't want to do a direct ripoff of Nitro, but having it look different than Dynamite would be probably not cost effective. But it would be interesting to see have a little bit of a different flair, similar to how SmackDown and Raw looked different when they first did the brand split. I love it, man. People are ripping on the WCW thing, and they're just trying to be Nitro. I didn't take it that way. I took it as a tribute and an homage and a recognizing the history of where they came from. They are on TNT. This is where WCW lived and breathed. So the fact that they're doing it's awesome.
Yeah, I think with them having to, I wonder if, their travel situation, are the trucks carrying Dynamite? Once Dynamite's over, are those same trucks then going to wherever, Collision is based? Like, how is their scheduling with that? Or are they going to have two sets of crew trucks? Because if they're already going to have, two sets of their production trucks, don't try. I know you want to save money, you want to be cost effective, but at the same time, I think it is vital that if you want Collision to be successful, it has to look different. It has to feel different. And the Observer is saying that the aesthetic, the paying homage to Nitro, might go beyond just that logo. There might be certain elements of it that they bring out. I'm very excited to see what that may be. Now, of course, if they come out and just replicate the Nitro entrance, people are going to crucify them for that.
I will love it.
I will pop huge if
I'll
I
probably
see
just
those.
watch because of that reason, honestly.
Dude, if they have those big diamond steel AEW letters right to the left, to the right and left of the entrance, I'm going to pop like just a monster, man. I'm excited. I'm excited.
I just am asking for once a year Club La Vila. I just want a pool party with the rotating rings. Can we please do that for Collision?
Please.
I know Club La Vila is no longer existing, and unfortunately, Hurricane Michael in 2018 was its demise, so now it's abandoned and whatever. But I'm sure somewhere in Florida, somewhere in California, there is a place you could put a rotating ring on a cylinder and someone could take a pool bump. I just need it. I understand that it's not pleasing everybody, and some people don't like Nitro, but to me, some of my more memorable fandom on that side of it was those events.
Those events burned into my mind. Club,
100%.
we need a couple weeks in like July at Club La Vila, and we need a couple weeks maybe in the winter Christmas months. Let's go out to the Mall of America and make that happen.
Hell yeah.
I would be such a fanboy for that.
Shout out to the Extra Cooler Boys. Now I have nobody eats beefaroni on a boat.
Yeah.
For Hulk Hogan. But let's move into the next story here. Kevin Nash revealed that former TNA and Impact executive Jeremy Borash has become Triple H's right-hand man. So this has appeared here, and I'll let you take the lead on this. But Jeremy Borash has been kind of quietly climbing up the ranks as importance in wrestling prestige, obviously, with Triple H looking at him so fondly.
Yeah, and this just paints TNA / Impact in a great light, because this man made his bones with that company for 16 years. He was the creative genius behind all the broken Matt Hardy stuff that kind of took the internet wrestling community by storm. And it was a quiet hire. I remember when he went to work with NXT, I felt like it didn't get a lot of the attention that it should have. And it just seemed like, there's an Impact guy who was in creative that's now in NXT. And this guy has slowly became like Trips' guy. I mean, he was behind the Boneyard match. For someone to get kind of bequeathed the booking and the shooting and the production of Undertaker's last match at Mania, that's a huge responsibility. And Kevin Nash came out and said Borash is absolutely a breed above others, and said he's Triple H's right-hand man. So Triple H even went on to say, when they hired him, and there was a media call a couple years after they hired Borash, and Triple H referred to him as an incredible talent with an eye for storytelling. So I think this might be, I don't know if we can make those Pat Patterson, Vince McMahon comparisons right now, but to see Borash really at Triple H's beck and call as far as like making things happen, making things look cool. He has an eye for it. It's an exciting possibility to watch unfold as far as just how close these guys are going to work together. Because we're really seeing, we talk about it with AEW and Tony Khan and who's going to be his inner circle. We're seeing two guys form the team that when we're in our 50s and 60s, they could be the brain trust of these companies. So it's fun to watch everything kind of play out.
Yeah, and you need those guys, as we talked so extensively about it on the AEW side. But I also give Triple H some credit, having an open-mindedness to have someone from the outside that wasn't from that tree of WWE being accepting that there's good ideas outside of the company.
It shows an openness that I think WWE hasn't been associated with in the past. Yep. And I love seeing someone open to outside voices.
So we also have Billy Corgan, and he was talking about just NWA, and we haven't talked about a lot of NWA because of them being on a downhill slide a little bit. But he was speaking to the New York Post, and he said, "We've seen where Star Wars let the fans book the franchise, and it's caused a bunch of problems. I've said openly that the fans are not going to book the NWA." So he's taking some of the criticism on their product, and there's been a lot of it. And really what was driving the fandom of it was the old school aesthetic, and people, it was kind of fan service. They were doing things that made people feel good when you watch. You can tune in on YouTube or wherever it's going to live in the future and feel like you're going to be pleased. And I think they've moved away from that over the past, I would say 7 to 8 months. And it doesn't feel like must-see TV. And of course, when you pull out some of the talent like Ricky Starks and Eddie Kingston, and they're being pillaged for bigger companies, and that is the idea. They're showcasing great talent. They're being damaged by that. But it's interesting to me that Billy Corgan is not going to, I mean, there's other ways you can say that without being as filled with barbs towards the fans, because at the end of the day, you need the fans to be happy with the product. I understand you don't want to give them everything.
Right.
But that could have been worded differently, in my opinion.
There's a fine line between letting the fans book and being fan and servicing the fans and giving the fans what they want. I feel like you have to listen to the crowd a little bit, but you definitely don't want to just follow the booking of the fans. But I think this is kind of in response to the heat he's been getting for putting the 10 pounds of gold on Tyrus, and the handling of Nick Aldis and the fallout of all of that. So I think he's trying to buck back at that. And I get what he's saying, and I tend to agree. You have to book, you have to keep your vision and not be influenced so much by the fans. But I feel like a good booker knows how to keep his ear to the ground. I think Vince was great at that, where he would, or especially early on, he would listen to the crowd, listen to the cheers, listen to the boos. Where are they taking me? And I think Tony Khan does a lot of that too. So as long as Billy needs to, I think it's due for some changes, man. When you've got Bully Ray over there, when you've got Matt Cardona over there, and the crowd are wanting them more involved in bigger situations, and you've got your belt on Tyrus, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not good heat. It's not like you're watching with bated breath, waiting for Tyrus to lose. People just tuned out. So it's like, all right, wake me up when he's no longer champion. And that's not good heat. That's you're alienating a fan base that clearly don't want to see him as champion. And there's a time and place for guys like that. And if it's making people tune in, like obviously if WWE is putting the title on someone you want to see lose, and you're tuning in every week and you're like, I can't wait to see this guys lose, that's a different story. But the way this is going, Tyrus is champion, people don't even know about it. It's like, all right, wake me up when it's no longer.
Exactly.
So let's get into the next story here. Former WWE SmackDown color commentator Pat McAfee signed with ESPN, and the full show is going there. The main reason it kind of ties in here, it's a 4-year, $120 million contract. Actually, that was the FanDuel contract. This is actually a multi-million-dollar deal, multi-year agreement, which we don't have the exact metrics on yet. So it's more money. The guys are being paid to go on this radio show and do things under the ESPN banner. How this affects SmackDown, it remains to be seen. Maybe he'll have some time to do this. We saw during the College Game Day that he wasn't as available. He made his return at WrestleMania. He was around doing what he was doing. He was at the Rumble as well. seems like there's going to be a shift in his scheduling that maybe he won't be as available, but remains to be seen. I mean, he still has that dream. He said it himself. The dream isn't done. I still have massive plans for my journey to the WWE Hall of Fame someday. Believe that. So I think he's going to prioritize it, but it seems like his priorities now are being forced to be ESPN's cash cow on this radio show on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think Pat's going to be a novelty act in WWE, where I think he'll always be showing up here and there when he's needed. But as far as being on the commentary team of SmackDown indefinitely, I think those days are over. I honestly do not see him being a week-to-week commentator. I think he'll definitely show back up, and I think he's gained credit with fans where he can come back and he'll get that pop and that welcome, and everyone loves Pat. Just to comment on the deal, man, this is a landmark deal. I don't know if you guys looked into this, but this is bigger than what a lot of people are kind of giving it credit for, because this is a situation where Pat has creative control.
Oh,
so
wow.
This is like, he has creative control for the show with ESPN. I'm sure something could happen and they could fire him, but he assured, like, the contract keeps the power in his hands. So you've got a guy who made his own bones on his own show on YouTube, and ESPN is paying for that, and they're letting him keep creative control. That's something that could open the door for other shows to come in and not be so much under the thumb of a big corporation on television. Again, if they want to get rid of you, they can get rid of you. But if you look at the parameters of this deal and the details laid out by Pat and that's came public, this is a pretty groundbreaking deal for a YouTube show.
Yeah, it's great for broadcasters all over the world, showing, you can start up similar to what we're doing here on a podcast. And if you get enough momentum behind you, you can have investors that want to be there. We saw FanDuel, we saw Barstool, we saw people that want to get behind the product, and it gets more and more expensive to keep Pat McAfee. And now ESPN has the money with the Mickey Mouse money behind them. They're able to keep him, but we'll see if it has the integrity of the show, because there's a lot of cursing and like stuff. And I'm not sure they're going to allow it on their airwaves.
Pat came out and said the only word they've agreed to not say is the F word. Everything else will fly, which I'm like, you're going to be saying shit on a Disney-owned station? Okay, let's see how that goes.
It just speaks about, they're so desperate to have content that people want. I know ESPN, they have UFC. That's a big piece as well. But having the Sports Center is not the same product it used to be. And their radio shows, whether you go with Colin Cowherd or even like they used to have Mike and Mike in the morning, and the show with Skip Bayless, it no longer is
First Take.
Yeah, First Take, or I think it is First Take, or Undisputed it's called now.
Oh, Undisputed, with Fox Sports, yeah.
Yeah, it just becomes like they're desperate for content. And speaking of leverage, Pat McAfee has so much leverage here, and I'm curious to see where it goes. It's also good for broadcasters everywhere.
Oh, big time. It's going to be interesting to see, because I think ESPN kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit by getting too political. I think a lot of fans out there, they just want their sports. And I think they started taking positions on certain things, drove a lot of fans away. And I think we're seeing the CNNs, the Fox Newses, the ESPNs, all of these news stations, whether it's straight news or sports news, we're seeing a lot of those stations have to counter and try and regroup against the surge of the internet and streaming, because a lot of cable cutting going out, a lot of cord cutting, and they have to find interesting ways to get people to stick around. That ties back into wrestling, because live anything is still a hot commodity. ESPN with the UFC deal, like you said, Ace, things like that keep people there. But as far as like shows, I think we're going to see a lot of these channels mining those independent YouTube shows that are getting millions of views, because they're like, man, we can't pull that on a cable. We got to bring those fans, and maybe they'll come back to cable to watch it. So this is
stay for the other stuff you have. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Like Pat McAfee has a base audience. If you watch any of his live content, it's thousands of comments. You can't even read them. It moves that fast.
The very interesting part of this deal, though, is he's going to go to ESPN on his show, but the show is still going to be on YouTube. So it's like, you're not forcing the YouTube people to follow him. You're not taking that show away from them on YouTube. So I'm that's the little thing where I'm like, how's that going to work?
Maybe they put it behind a paywall where you can watch a certain amount of time or a certain window of time. Like the first 3 hours of the show are free, and then you have to watch, I don't know. They'll figure something out because it's a gateway. It's a gateway thing to keep the first of all, show the base fans that it's not going to change. And I think then you can start charging if it's something like putting on the ESPN Plus app where it costs $3.99 a month.
Right.
So we also have Colt Cabana here in the news, and he revealed he's contracted to AEW as a wrestler and producer. So he was on the Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw podcast. He confirmed that he's currently contracted to AEW. And he said, it's unbelievable for me. And that's a reality right now at my age. I love it. Obviously, there's been some confusion over Cabana's status with the company for some time due to how sporadically he's worked. The last AEW match was against Jericho in November 2022. That was the big FU to CM Punk. And we found out that he bought socks from Target and his legs almost like, whatever. They were too tight. He couldn't stay on top of the ropes.
Yeah.
But there's been some speculation regarding if the heat with CM Punk had anything to do with it. That's where that's the issue too. If we talk about want to talk about the Big Bang or whatever started all this, the Colt Cabana stuff or the conjecture in the news about their heat, where they were not as copacetic as everyone thought they were. That's kind of started it. And it sounds like people are still planting seeds where maybe there's nothing there. Who knows? I know Colt Cabana has been quiet about all of this. He didn't comment on anything, and speaks volumes about his character. Like he was able to take the heat and walk away.
Yeah, just there's no good to come from commenting on it if you're Colt Cabana. And I thought the interesting thing, I like that he's a producer, man. I think that's a good guy, a good indie mind, a good someone who's made his own way on the indies. I like that he's not only just in the ring, he's helping guys in the back. I think that's good.
So we also have Seth Rollins. He could be the new world heavyweight champion, but he also is on the film set of a new Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. This is the movie Captain America New World Order, which is being filmed in Atlanta. There were some opt photos of him as the villain, and we don't know exactly his role. Details are limited, but it seems like people familiar with the Marvel Universe, he'll be playing a member of the Serpent Society. They're a snake-themed criminal group based on his outfit. The New World Order is the fourth movie in the Marvel's Captain America franchise, so pretty big deal for Seth Rollins. I'm not sure how big of a role he will have, but Batista with the Drax character, that is going to pay dividends for a very long time. I know we just saw the finale of Guardians of the Galaxy, but he'll be included forever and ever. Action figures and merchandise outside of your wrestling career. So Seth Rollins, to me, kind of looks like a superhero or super villain. I wasn't surprised to see this. I didn't know it was happening, but it didn't shock me to see him involved.
Yeah, kind of now it makes sense why he's flipped his hair up, changed it up with the bleach,
Yeah.
Because I'm like, maybe he did that because of the role in this movie. I think it's awesome, man. Anytime you get crossover with wrestlers, especially in roles like this in a Marvel movie, Marvel's super, super hot. It's fun. It'll be fun to see Rollins in there.
Well, maybe Pat McAfee will be in a Marvel movie soon since they're all under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
We have Saraya commenting on the Thunder Rosa Britt Baker beef. I'll let you take the lead on this. Took a back seat of the Punk stuff, but this was a big piece of drama that was happening. We saw it take a little bit on the All Access show. Of course, they're putting some lipstick on it, making it look a little bit better than it actually is.
Yeah.
But speak to what Saraya had said.
Yeah, she was on the Corner podcast, and she was just kind of weighing in about Britt and Thunder, and she said people need to get over that dude. Thunder loves to talk, that's for sure. She definitely loves to talk. People think Britt talks a lot, but the AEW All Access reality show was filmed ages ago, and they're just repeating the story, so everyone thinks it's Britt bringing all of this up. And then she gets asked questions about it in interviews, and then it brings it all up again. She's not going out there and doing it, but Thunder just likes to talk about it. I get that. I mean, that was back in the fall when they were shooting All Access. That was the hot topic at the time. And now that it's being aired and she's having to comment on this stuff and Thunder's on Busted Open, she's commenting on it. I think Saraya's just like, the public perception of it is probably bigger than what's actually going on. And Saraya went on to confirm that Thunder Rosa came and apologized to everyone. She said she didn't need to apologize to me because I wasn't here when all that was going on, but she came in and apologized to the locker room. And she went on to say right now, regardless of what the reports say and the dirt sheets, that the backstage environment is in better condition now, and there's just an overall welcoming feeling. So just addressing, the Thunder Brit stuff, but I do think it's a telltale sign when you see Thunder being on that Collision announcement. And so we'll see.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, that they've kind of buried the hatchet with each other because of it's being featured on All Access. It's
right. They're okay with it.
They're speaking in tongue about the Punk situation, but they're being pretty direct with Thunder and Britt.
Did you see the report though? We don't have it in quick hitters, but since you brought it up, did you see the report where they said that AEW All Access did film a lot of footage straight up addressing the Punk shit, but at last minute, yeah, they didn't. They edited it out because of legal reasons. Like Tony was nervous to put it in there because of the legalities of it, but there was footage, and you can tell now that was said. They've edited around a lot of it.
Man, to get on the cutting room floor and get some of that footage, that's to see it. And I know it'll be doctored up for Hollywood and all that, but just to see, it'd be fascinating. Like, Wrestling with Shadows, that's so, even now, it's 25,
iconic.
30 years later, it's still so interesting to watch. It'd be iconic. Maybe eventually it gets released.
Yeah.
Who knows? We have Roman Reigns announced for a rare WWE house show appearance this past week. So as the venue, this would have been yesterday that he was there. And Fayetteville at the Coca-Cola Coliseum. And we're also seeing he's be working Mexico as well. So using Roman Reigns and just his existence on these house shows has been driving ticket sales to a level where he is a difference maker, clearly. I mean, that goes without saying. So they're going to use him sparingly. I think we're going to see him in Mexico. I think we have another quick hitter here about him in Mexico. But having him involved in house shows, they really don't need. Maybe if the market is dried up in some of these spots, but we see Cody Rhodes driving a lot of them, and they're not. We use it as a barometer of how successful and how popular the company is. When they pull Roman Reigns out, I think it's just showing off. They don't need a lot of these guys. They're pulling huge numbers at these house shows, where in places that they go to pretty often. So it's a good sign that WWE is thriving.
Yeah, I don't think they need him. I remember hearing on Busted Open, Dave LaGreca talk about the difference between Stone Cold and Hogan, and how, the house show business during Hogan's day, if Hogan wasn't on that house show, the numbers would be drastically low. Like, people would not go because he was growing up going to those shows. Like, if Hogan was on the card, sell out. But during Stone Cold's day, even if the business was so hot at that time, even if Stone Cold wasn't on the card, it was a sellout because of all the talent they had. And I think it helps, obviously, having Roman on the card, but I think the business is healthy to a point where you don't need him. You're still going to draw a good house with or without Roman.
So just to clarify, I went down the quick hitters just because, again, we're filming on Sunday. He was advertised at Fayetteville, did not show up. They issued some refunds because of the incorrect promotional material, but he is officially announced for a Mexico house show this summer. So that'll be at the Arena CDMX on Saturday, July 22nd. They've advertised Rey Mysterio, Raquel Rodriguez, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, Charlotte, Sammy, Kevin Owens, and Roman Reigns. It's his first time wrestling in Mexico since 2019. As we know, he signed that new deal back in 2022, so house show appearances are few and far between. And like we said, he was advertised for the North Carolina show, pulled off. People were upset. They issued some refunds. And we'll see what happens as far as maybe the international thing's important for them. Maybe they're trying to have a good analytic and metric on if they can house a PLE. We heard Australia, we heard India, which we'll talk about in a second. They're trying to gauge the market, and they're giving it their best shot with Roman Reigns to see how far they can take it and the buzz that creates in Mexico.
I'm just shaking my head right now. Stanford, man. How you gonna announce a guy and then him not show up? I mean, I know cards subject to change, to be announced, all the horse shit, but come on, man. Like, if I have my little kid and he's wanting to go, put the ones up for the tribal chief and acknowledge him, and I go and he's not there, I'd be pretty hot about it.
Yeah, I guess they did right by issuing the refund. I don't know how it happened and who does their promotionals, but maybe someone heard wrong. Maybe they didn't know that he doesn't
The
appear
only
at house
thing with that,
shows.
it's like, I get it. They did right. They gave, I think, more from the child's perspective. They gave
True. You're
the
right.
refund for the parent. Okay, the parents, fine. Kid doesn't give a shit about the refund. Kid came to see his hero and the hero's not there. Like as a adult, you're like, oh, okay, I got my money back. Cool. But the kid, it's like, man, I wanted to see Roman. I've been that kid before. I've went to WCW house shows wanting to see Surfer Sting, and he wasn't there, and I was hot about it. Come on,
Right.
man. Remember the kids.
Very good point, Chad. You got to remember the kids here, and that's important for the fan base. You want to plant the seeds for future fandom, and they remember. They'll be on a podcast 20 years from now talking about it. I remember Roman was supposed to be in Fate until he wasn't there. God damn it!
Exactly.
So Dax Harwood was talking about the house shows, and it's kind of applicable on the AEW side. These are they're new for AEW. So as far as we heard a little conversation about wrestlers not wanting to work, and specifically John Moxley didn't want to work them, but some of the young wrestlers have come out. Sammy Guevara said didn't want to work them. But Dax Harwood had a different take, and he said, if you're a young wrestler and you ain't begging to be on these house shows, just get out. A rare singles match for me. Who should I wrestle? I plan on killing it. And Tupelo, that's where they're having the next one.
Yeah.
He calls it a great learning experience. And if you're done learning, time to leave. Your thoughts on this? I mean, Dax Harwood has been, as far as the podcast, created some caustic reactions from other people. This is the type of stuff that will anger some people, but he said nothing wrong here. But I'm sure people will spin it in a way that he was being disrespectful. I thought he was speaking the truth, and the young wrestlers should want to get reps. That's how you get better.
The people that get mad about this is the young generation that you got to handle with kid gloves, because this is 100% the truth. Like, if you're a young guy and you're not wanting to be in that ring any chance you get, you're doing it wrong. I saw Matt Cardona, I think, respond to someone who said wrestlers should want to train more. They should want to train more. And Matt Cardona kind of corrected them and say, no, wrestlers should want to wrestle in front of live fans more. And I think what that does, there's a difference between being in a training room and taking bumps and learning the technique of it all. But it's like a stand-up comedian, man. You can sit and develop your jokes in your room and write them and perform them into the mirror, all you want to do, which is the equivalent of training in a warehouse by yourself with other wrestlers. It's a whole different animal to go up on stage and do those jokes like a wrestler. You have to learn how to feel the audience. It's just a completely different animal. And I think if you're a young person, Dak's spot on. You have to want to get those reps in. It's only going to make you better.
So staying on AEW here, we have Tony Khan coming out, said he wants to do a large scale event at the Craven Cottage someday, but Wembley Stadium was his first pick for AEW All In. As we know, Craven Cottage is the home of Fulham FC, which is his, soccer club that he owns. This has been in existence since 1896, so a lot of history there. However, Tony Khan was talking to Talk Sport radio show about Wembley, and this is what he said. Craven Cottage is literally home to me. I would love to do any big event there. I think Wembley offered several things that we just couldn't possibly do at the Cottage. In this case, the load and logistically at Craven Cottage is going to be pretty much impossible, and it would have been really, really hard to make a big-scale event there based on how challenging it would be to load the set and the ring and all the elements from a big wrestling show into the Craven Cottage. He said you have to remember the Cottage was built in 1879. We've done a lot of renovations, to say the least, on the Riverside in recent years, but I also think really Wembley offered us a much less challenging load in, and also the ability to sell many, many times more tickets now that we've already sold twice as many tickets as we could have at Craven Cottage. He also continued, Wembley's, to be honest, my first choice of where to do the show. At Wembley Stadium, so much of my life, so many of my great memories are there at Wembley Stadium. So everyone talks about Craven Cottage like being the smaller option, but it's interesting to see the spin, and this is obviously his mindset, of the load in and figuring out how to get into an old stadium. It's not meant to bring a ring in. It's not meant to house a big event with a lot of production crews, because in 1896, that wasn't the intention of the arena. It was just to have some fans drinking some beer, watching some football.
And I don't think this is him spinning it like to be. I think this is a truthful spin where he's really like, you got to think of the rigging. the way, the load in is something fans never think about. I've heard of horror stories with bands having load ins where you have to carry your shit up 3 flights of stairs and how much of a pain in the ass that can be. We don't know what the rigging situation is at Craven Cottage. Like, how are they going to rig the lighting setup? All of that plays into this. And with an old building, you typically don't have the space, the luxuries of all the up-to-date equipment. And I think plus, why would you sell yourself short on your first intro into the UK? Like, I think it was a wise decision to go for more tickets, make it a bigger special event. You can always turn Craven Cottage into kind of a key Dynamite location or a potential future pay-per-view down the road when the heat of their first arrival in the region cools off. It could be a nice little backup spot. It's always there. I mean, it's Fulham's home.
Yeah, I love that he's making Craven Cottage still feel like something AEW is striving towards.
Absolutely.
Because of the fact of its history and just the longevity and what it means to the Khan family. But I think back at Fenway Park hosting the Winter Classic years back, and they've done renovations, and Wrigley Field had the renovations when they host big events and concerts. Pearl Jam plays at both spots, and you bring a lot of people in. The same can be said too. Wrigley Field and Fenway Park were built early 1900s, and even if you make all the renovations, the infrastructure is still old, and it's not meant to have things that weren't even a thought process at the time.
Right.
So the loading that's the main part, but it's also, like you said, logistically, some of the electronics that have to go in and figuring out the layout, aesthetically beautiful. That was one of my favorite winter classic on New Year's Day for the NHL, but I'm sure it was a nightmare compared to doing it at, a newer stadium when they did it at Yankee Stadium, the new one. It's completely different thing going on. So Craven Cottage is going to have a cool optic, and they will do it. But it's interesting to hear what he had said about some of the obstacles, which people don't think about. You don't think about the obstacles. You think, cut and paste, you could put the ring in there.
Right.
But people got to build the goddamn ring.
Yeah.
All right. So we also have some UFC crossover talk here, and Henry Cejudo is talking about potentially doing something in pro wrestling. So he's a former UFC bantamweight and flyweight champion. He was on a recent interview talking about being in talks with WWE and nearly signing a contract with them at one point. He talked about potentially working a match, and he had talked to Jerry Briscoe. They wanted to fly him out to Orlando and do all the trial stuff. He said it did intrigue him, but it wasn't going to be happening at that time. If you do remember, which I did not, he did make an appearance back in 2020, AEW to accompany Mike Tyson. Yep. And he says that if he did pro wrestling, he would want it to be a one-off with WWE or AEW. So you're more the UFC guy. As far as star power goes, is this a big deal? This would draw a lot of people or not really?
I mean, Cejudo in UFC was a double champion, big deal, former Olympic gold medalist. I mean, he's legit as it comes, but he's a small guy. We're talking flyweight and bantamweight. We're talking 125, 135 pounds. I think for somebody like that, he's not going to draw big numbers in with the casuals. UFC people might, tune in out of morbid curiosity, but I couldn't see him. I think the Jerry Briscoe thing is just that wrestler connection. He probably brought him in because the guy's an Olympian, but he's too small, man. He's smaller than Chad Gable, and we see how they treat Chad Gable. So I don't see him making some big impact in a WWE. Again, he showed up in AEW with a couple other mixed martial artists backing up Tyson, but I just don't. He's not a extremely charismatic guy. He kind of plays up this cringe gimmick in the mixed martial arts world, but I just don't think this is much ado about nothing, in my opinion.
So we also have a guy that we all know and love, Bryan Danielson. He's set to work on the creative team for the new AEW Collision show. And we've talked about throughout this show and in the past, building a team around you. You have resources, Dean Malenko, Jerry Lynn, but even guys that are still active, Chris Jericho. But Bryan Danielson is an obvious option to help build story. He's a guy who's been around multiple companies, been on multiple stages. I love this. I think having him part of creative is a no-brainer. You got obviously MJF, the Elite, Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley, CM Punk, and FTR. When those things work out, they all can give significant input into their own storylines and creative directions without giving them too much creative control. But Bryan Danielson's proven that he's been selfless in all ways. I think we talked about, like, he probably was begging Jon Moxley that I want to lose. That's the kind of mindset he has. He wants to just put on good matches, but doesn't want to be, and this is my perception of it, he's my favorite wrestler of all time. He wants to help the future generation more than he wants his own accolades at this point. I think this is great. I think it's awesome to utilize the brain power you have in your own locker room.
I love it. I love it. I think guys like Danielson, Moxley, Jericho becoming more involved in the backstage area is the right move for Tony. I think this is also a genius way to get Brian tapped into that. He said he's not long for this world in ring, this is a way. I would love to see him become a part of that AEW backstage family, running stuff like this, being a part of the creative, where we can see his contributions to the business long after he hangs up his tights and boots, so I love this. I'll absolutely love it.
Yeah, and if you guys are unaware, he did help with WWE Creative when he was with the company, and he also did that mostly when he was sidelined with his injury. And people in WWE had nothing but complimentary things to say about his demeanor while helping creative, and had the best mindset towards it. So again, utilize who you have in the back, but also you can bring people in. But you look at the team he's constructing: Pat Buck, Dean Malenko, Chris Daniels, Jerry Lynn. Now you have Will Washington coming from the Grapsody, the media world. QT Marshall, Sanjay Dutt. There's a lot of people, not to mention the guys you have active, as I mentioned before, Chris Jericho and the Elite.
Yeah.
An eclectic mix of people that can give different mindset and have a well-rounded show. That's what you want.
Absolutely.
So we have DIY potentially returning, and Johnny Gargano has been floundering since his return here on WWE TV. And a new report from Better Wrestling Experience, aka Bowser Wrestling, reveals Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano are set to receive a big push on the main roster. So it was noted the push will begin after Night of Champions and go into the lead up to Money in the Bank. So we know DIY teamed in NXT. They previously held the NXT tag team titles on one occasion. Then they feuded. The last standard tag team match that DIY had was back in 2020 at NXT Worlds Collide, where they defeated Mustache Mountain in a match that went 20 minutes plus, a great match. Love it. I love, first of all, Tommaso Ciampa being healthy enough to come back and wrestle. A DIY run on the WWE main roster has some legs for me. I think it'd be awesome to add them to the tag division that needs another tag team. They really do. This
would be a big get for the tag division. I love this tag team. Their series of matches with FTR, the Revival at the time, were incredible in NXT. I don't think either one of these guys has much legs as far as a main event run in the singles area, but to add them to the tag division instantly makes that credible.
So I mentioned before about traveling internationally, and WWE's eyes are towards different countries running PLEs. We mentioned Australia, obviously Saudi Arabia this weekend. But Nick Khan on a call, telecom conference call this past Thursday, talked a little bit about a whole bunch of things. But the one piece of news that he did talk about is going to India. And they were supposed to do that last November, but it was postponed in late December due to the merger between Sony and Z, the former of which WWE is a broadcast partner, and there are 2 years left in the deal. And during the Thunderdome era, they were supposed to go back there it's called the Superstar Spectacle. That obviously got canceled for the world events. He talked about India being the second most popular sport, being WWE after cricket. And he talks about the WWE network subscriptions is like beyond. You look at the social media presence. If you look at what they do as far as the Indian fandom, makes sense to have them there. And the bar has been raised for crowds, international crowds. We talked about Clash of the Castle, but now the bar to me is the Puerto Rican crowd. And can you top that? And I think all these different countries that get sparse events in their area, they're going to step it up. And I think we're going to see an Indian event very, very soon.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Going to a market like that. And it cracks me up because there was a meme saying that anytime there's a negative, something about negative comments on any post that is critical of WWE, if you look at your comment section, man, those WWE fans from India, they ride or die for WWE, man. There is a large section of fans over there that love WWE. And I think you could fill a big arena over there. I don't know what their arena situation's like. I don't know what the big spot would be, but I'd be down for it. I love seeing shows in new markets with hungry fans.
Yeah, we'll see it soon. I'm sure they'll announce it, and we'll see how the summer does with all the international dates they have on par. And this is just good for wrestling. Of course, we want stuff here, but it's going to create a buzz in the United States when you're not getting as many shows. You're not going to be running, where I am in the Northeast
Right.
or where you are. They're not running as often. So by proxy, you're going to make it a little bit more valuable when they do. So crowds will be a little bit more up and ready
Absolutely.
for it. Because I talked about UBS, it did not even have close the energy that it had the first time they came back. And that's what we always talk about with these crowds. You run a market too much, you start to wear them down, and it doesn't feel as special. So maybe
Right.
people will start treating it as such.
Right.
Drew McIntyre's return to WWE television is more of a creative issue at this point. So he has not appeared on WWE programming since WrestleMania 39, that awesome triple threat match for the IC title. Meltzer had said, at this point, McIntyre's return is basically more a creative issue regarding what they want, what he wants, and when they agree to it. Everyone talked about it being injury-based, Chad, but I don't see it being that anymore. It seems like he just wants to be treated as a big star, and deservedly so. I think he kind of sees, and maybe with this new world title, that kind of changes his perspective about coming back. But obviously, they're treating him as if he's coming back because they switched him from SmackDown to Raw during the draft and they announced it. But we know his contract's coming up, and the two sides aren't close to a deal. We'll see what happens. I think Drew would be a valuable free agent for anybody looking for a huge star to bring in for a buzz.
Yeah, I love Drew. I think he looks like create a wrestler. So somebody you would make in a video game. I'm good either way. I hope if he stays in WWE, they push him the right way. And if he wants to leave and bet on himself again, because he was kind of the poster boy of that, I'd be down for that too, to see him at the top of the card in Impact again, or AEW, or any other company. Even a run in Japan would be crazy and fun. So
Ooh,
I'm down
how
for
about that?
anything.
You mentioned video game and made for video game. Well, AEW's upcoming video game, Fight Forever, finally has a goddamn release date. And it's going to be scheduled to release on June 27th. So retailers, and we saw a couple of videos posted with the accomplishments and trophies on people's Xboxes and PS5s. So the game, if you remember, was announced originally back in November 2020. There's been a lot of changes. There's been a lot of things in the way, I think, because of the content of the game. They couldn't get the right rating. I think that's what we were discussing as far as the game's content. They wanted a teen rating, but they were being treated as like a mature rating because of the blood and the death match stuff they were doing in it. Because I think they want to include the barbed wire matches, and there was a lot of blood. Even though it's cartoony and video game graphics, it couldn't get past. So I'm interested in this game coming out. I think we're going to get more information about it, but I think AEW needs a video game. It's been too far between. I mean, ECW got a video game pretty soon into their lineage. So like at this point, AEW needs it. It's part of wrestling fandom and wrestling benchmarks. AEW needs a video game, and it looks like No Mercy from N64, and I'm all in on it.
Yeah, I have no problem waiting if they're working the kinks out and making sure it's as good as it can be. You don't want to jump the gun and give us like something, because it will be tore apart if it comes short. But everything I've seen from it, the images, the gameplay, looks incredible.
And I don't want it to be WWE 2K. I want it to be its own thing. And this is also me, I'm older and I'm not speaking to the younger fans, but I like games that are arcade based. That's me. I like that shit because it speaks to me. I love the WrestleMania 2000 game on N64, SmackDown vs. Raw.
It's user friendly.
I love it. It's like you could pick up the controller and just play. You don't need to download a whole bunch of skins and arena.
Right.
Like I just like it just existing as is. That's just my fandom though.
That's me. I get lost if it feels like I'm having to do brain surgery by the button combinations to pull a move off. I get bored and just give it up.
Yeah, we have to have a tavern tournament one of these days. We'll host the game, put it on a big screen, beers,
that'd be
and pizza.
great.
I would love it. Finally, here in the quick hitters, the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship have been vacated. So it was announced on social media Friday evening that the titles were vacated due to Liv Morgan's injury. She suffered on last week's SmackDown. The new champions will be crowned on the May 29th edition of Raw. Raquel Rodriguez and a mystery partner will team up and take on Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler, Bayley and Io Sky of Damage Control, and Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green in a 4-way match. These titles are cursed, man. Like
get rid of these titles, dude.
Take the signs, guys. It's the
get
signs
rid
from the
of
higher
them.
Power.
I get. We're all for equality, and I feel like You don't have the talent or the division. You haven't built the division to justify tag titles. It's never worked. Every time you try and get a little behind it, some cursed happening goes down. Like, dude, just get rid of these titles. They are not. I don't know. I've never been bought in on these titles, and
I
stuff
agree.
like this just proves to me that they shouldn't be there.
Well, we are skipping Dave's raves. We talked about Dave in the first story here. He has no match of the week, no performer of the week. Let's get right to the week ahead.
The week ahead.
All right. If you're tuning in late and looking for Double or Nothing, Under Siege, or Night of Champions card, go back to the big three stories. There was our third story. So we're going to just cover the other wrestling shows this week. And of course, AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, 5/24. A stacked card. A lot of promos. We have an FTR promo, Ricky Starks promo, Four Pillars promo. But we're getting 3 title matches too. The international champion, Orange Cassidy, will defend his title against Kyle Fletcher. We get a trios championship match, House of Black against Blake Christian, AR Fox, and Metalik. And we also get an ROH Tag Team Championship match. The Lucha Brothers, of course, Rey Fenix and Penta El Cerro taking on the Blackpool Combat Club after that double Jeopardy match. So Castagnoli had picked Wheeler Yuta. So we're going to get an ROH Tag Title match. And we're going to get, of course, we mentioned before, Tony Khan announcing the first location of AEW Collision. Will it be Jacksonville, Florida, at Daly's place, or will it be the United Center, Chicago? We're going to get a lot of information through that one announcement.
Yeah, it is. I love the House of Black featuring, it seems like every other week we're getting a trios title match here recently. So I think this is a good card. It looks like it's geared up to be a good go home show for Double or Nothing.
Yeah, Blake Christian, AR Fox, and Metalik are about to get bodied, but they are not a throw together team. We've seen them on Ring of Honor TV from week to week, and they got a 6-man championship defense against the Embassy in a losing effort, but they have been billed as a team for quite some time. Interesting that they be on the AEW side, but clearly they're just being fed to the monsters that are House of Black, which is okay.
Yeah.
We need that sometimes.
Yeah, we need that. And those guys can bump around like nobody's business, so it'll be good.
We also have Impact, which is the go-home show. The night before Under Siege, we get 3 matches. We got Angels versus Rich Swann. We got Mike Bailey versus Chris Sabin, and Jordan Grace versus Alicia Edwards. Probably telling more stories about Steve Macklin and PCO, but all things are considered, they have Under Siege locked up, and this is just the final taste before people buy the pay-per-view.
Yeah, that Jordan Grace, Alicia Edwards is just going to be a straight squash, but Mike Bailey, Chris Sabin, that'll be a fun one. All roads lead to Under Siege.
NXT on 5/25, Noam Dar versus Nathan Frazier. We get 2 NXT Women's Championship Tournament semifinal matches, Roxanne Perez versus Tiffany Stratton, and we also get Leah Valkyrie versus Cora Jade. The winners of those go on to Battleground to face each other, and we get Hank Walker versus Tank Ledger, 5-star classic on deck. Be honest with you, no idea who Hank Walker or Tank Ledger is. Tank Ledger sounds like he's from your neck of the woods over there in West Virginia.
Oh yeah, Hank Walker too. Both of them. I mean, this is like a creative player tag team. These names are horrendous.
Yeah, they're buying some lotto right now somewhere in West Virginia right now. If you listen carefully,
they're buying lottery tickets at the gas station.
For Raw, we have a decent show. Some announcements here: Candice LeRae versus Zoe Stark. We get Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and a mystery partner versus Imperium, which has me interested. I like what they've been building with Gunther, Ludwig Kaiser, and Giovanni Vinci. Maybe it's going to be Riddle. I'm not sure who it might be, but I love what they're building with. Man, Imperium feels like a badass. And I know it was their debut or Gunther's debut on Raw last week. He feels like a big bad. I love it.
Yeah, this is one of the the tag titles bum me out because I feel like Ludwig and Vinci, man, I want to see the straps on them.
That would be awesome. For SmackDown on Friday, we have the KO show with Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, and Sol Sikoa. We have the U.S. Championship, Austin Theory versus Sheamus, which I feel like should have been on Night of Champions. Maybe they're setting something up like a rematch for Night of Champions. It is Night of Champions. You should be defending all your titles, but the Undisputed Universal Championship's not being defended, and also the U.S. title. I think we need them defended, so maybe they're setting the tone. And I know this was taped, too, because they taped 2 events before they went over to Jeddah. So if you want to read spoilers and figure out if Austin Theory is defending, so we'll have that soon. And AJ Styles versus Karrion Kross. And as we mentioned, Raquel Rodriguez and a mystery partner versus Damage Control, Bailey, and Io Sky. So they're kind of spamming the mystery partner button a little bit over on the WWE side.
Big time, big time.
And we're continuing to build towards 2 big shows. We have New Japan Pro Wrestling Dominion on 6/4, main evented by Sonata versus Yota Tsuji. The openweight title, David Finlay versus El Phantasmo. The IWGP Tag Titles, Aussie Open defending against Evil and Takahashi. And also Bishiman, which is Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi. The World TV title, Zack Sabre Jr. against Jeff Cobb. And we get a winner gets a future U.S. title match, Lance Archer versus Tanahashi. So good stuff on the horizon here for New Japan Pro Wrestling. They've been planting seeds on Ring of Honor for Zack Sabre Jr. versus Samoa Joe feud. They're teaming this week on Ring of Honor. Would love to see them go at it at, I don't know what the event looks like, but Samoa Joe in Japan piques my interest.
Yeah, that Sabre, I've seen those teases, so hopefully that pans out in some form or fashion.
Well, Chad, that's all we got here today, and I appreciate everyone watching and listening. If you guys are listening to the day after, love it as well. So a lot of good stuff in the wrestling news, so don't be bogged down by the negativity. The one thing Punk did get right, go out and touch grass. You guys, everything's fine. As Bellcaster says, enjoy the ride, all that good stuff. But there's a lot of good stuff to be happy about pro wrestling, not just the negativity and throwing pipe bombs into what has been a feel-good month for AEW aside from all this stuff.
Yeah, just, don't be swayed by the behind-the-scenes drama. Just watch the on-screen stuff. If you're not happy with just what's being shown to you on TV, that's one thing. But don't let things like influence you or, make your own decisions up. Don't buy too much into the backstage heat and enjoy wrestling, man. There's a lot of great stuff out there. So
I agree, man. And again, lost in all of this is we got 60+K people in All In August, and they only have a match announced. And we got Forbidden Door coming up, and outside of Impact's having some feel good stuff going on. And so
SummerSlam's on the horizon.
You're gonna pick and choose the stuff you consume. As always, you can use this piece of advice in the life with media. Watching, the news. Some people just chose to stop watching the news. When they don't want the negativity in your life. You could do the same thing with wrestling media. If you feel like you're bogged down with it, you don't have to consume it. So just keep that peace of mind. Just consume us and then skip ahead. If you don't want to listen to CM Punk Collision stuff, skip ahead to Superstar Billy Graham.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all we got, Chad. Make sure you guys check out Shot Nostalgia this week. We have another pay-per-view on deck covering Judgment Day. So that is going to be a great episode. We're going to be recording. Mike will be in Vegas for Double or Nothing. So we're going to try to get everything together and cook it up this weekend. This way we can make sure that Mike is on. So this way it's not just me talking at you guys for Shot Nostalgia.
Yeah, it'll be a big week at the tavern. You got all these go home shows. Raw Down will be breaking down and previewing Night of Champions. They'll be back after they were preempted by the Westminster Dog Show last week. But the flagship will be setting the table for Double or Nothing and all that good stuff. So tune in, theturnbuckletavern.com. If you go to the channel, the big thing, just show us some love on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, follow, like, subscribe, anything like that. We appreciate. And you have anything else, Ace? Or are we ready to get out of here?
We're ready to get out of here. Go enjoy Raw, what's left of it. I think you guys have about, whatever. It's 3-hour Raw, so it's a lot of Raw left. So go enjoy it. Hopefully they keep up their end of the deal and have the matches they announce. We can't promise that, though. We only give you the information they give us prior to Raw airing. So Vince behind, we don't know.
Yeah, tune in next week, 7 p.m. on Mondays, Wrestling Tonight. Maybe we'll have an answer. Will it be Daly's Place or will it be Chicago with Punk? The saga continues. Until then, God luck and good speed.
Reach for the sky, boy.